This is a life seminar today. Life stands for living independently, free, and empowered. And this is Sam Adams, your tech instructor, coming to you today from lovely sunny Gold River. And I'm pleased to bring to you Aser Tolentino, who in my mind is somebody who embodies those attributes that we suggest life stands for. I don't want to take a whole bunch of time with introductions. In fact, I'm not going to take any time with introductions today because there's too much to talk about. So no icebreakers, sorry. Aser is no stranger to many of you because Aser was a tech instructor at Society for the Blind until 2 years ago, just after COVID started. And Aser was my tech instructor when I was a student at Society, as well as many of you have had contact with him. I wanted to bring him back because he never ceases to teach me something, even if it's not intended. So there's always something to learn. But first, I wanted, for those of you who don't know Aser, let's start with a little bit of background. So, Aser, do tell, when were you at Society for the Blind?
So I first encountered Society for the Blind in about 2003 or so when I received a tour as a high school student, learning about different services for people who were blind or visually impaired in the region, especially since as someone who would be tasked with sort of navigating that semi-independently going forward, it would be a good idea to know what was out there. When I graduated from law school, I suffered a bit more vision loss and so needed some vocational rehabilitation training, particularly O&M and technology. So I was referred to Society for the Blind and went through those classes in 2014 and began volunteering shortly thereafter. When I found out that there would be a need for an assistive technology instructor in spring of that year, I applied and they, I guess, saw some potential in me. So I worked there for the next 5 years or so.
Okay. So you went to law school at UC Davis?
Yes.
And where'd you do your undergrad?
Also UC Davis, right?
Oh,
Immediately across the street.
okay.
I
And
didn't want to learn
graduated
a new
from,
campus.
got it. And graduated from law school in 2014?
2010. So
2010, okay. Vision loss caused by what?
So I have had glaucoma from birth. It manifested pretty much as soon as they were able to conduct a physical examination. I was diagnosed when I believe I was about 1 year old and suffered pretty gradual vision loss until I no longer had functional use of my right eye when I was a freshman in high school, or excuse me, a freshman in college, and then actually had that eye removed in my fall semester, third year law school, and then a year into being a volunteer deputy district attorney in 2011, my vision in my left eye failed. So that brought about some exploratory procedures to see if that was something that could be reversed, and when it wasn't, I went back to AT and O&M training.
So now, do you have any residual sight? Any
Uh,
light perception?
I have a hint of light perception, and I generally don't rely on it for anything.
Okay. Growing up, that one eye did give you some residual sight, obviously, then.
Oh, yeah. So through all the way until the end of high school, I was right eye dominant and could read, say, 20-point font, and then could do likewise with my left eye until about maybe 10 years later.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
But you learned Braille as a child?
yes, I was as part of my IEP, my uh, uh, instructors and professionals believed that it was a good idea to have that skill set and maintain it so that in the event that I needed it, it would be available. And it was particularly useful for things like math.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And then other technology that you used as a kid? Did you use any?
So technology was something that I was familiarized with fairly early. I believe I was taught to touch type when I was in uh, first or second grade. That's pretty common now, but back then was some sort of novel. I was introduced to screen readers in about third grade, and I think the first time I started working with JAWS, it was version 3.0 or so. Um, it really was more magnification, both in terms of software and CCTVs for me. I
Mm-hmm.
used uh, uh, video magnifiers for reading all the way in to and through college, but started using more uh, optical character recognition and electronic textbooks as those technologies sort of matured.
And then you got through the bar course by using an app on your phone?
Yes. So that was the first year that a company called Barmax sought to disrupt the way that people learn how to practice for the bar exam. If you're not familiar, the bar exam is the test that you take to be licensed to practice law. Every state has a bar exam. Most of them use the same test. California is different because we have a policy wherein anyone can take the bar exam, whether they've gone to law school or not. So the California bar exam is generally regarded as the most difficult one in the country. Uh, it's 3 days long and involves multiple choice questions, essay questions, and these sort of practical uh, exam uh, scenarios where you're given a set of facts and a bunch of uh, sort of fictitious cases that you need to quote from. And this whole uh, system of testing to prepare for it would require you to, after law school, take another class from a company to learn how to take the test. And this would be like a 6 week or 2 month course and would require you to basically rent a set of books from them. Uh, at the time, this was not an accessible process at all. So it was not looking like something that would be very pleasant to work through. But as I said, the first year Barmex was offered was the first year I happened to be, well, thankfully, the only year I needed to take the bar exam. And I read about it through it was TechCrunch or something like that, some sort of technology blog. And I was like, I wonder. And so I downloaded their app to test or to prepare for a different test you have to take as an attorney called the MPRE, which is the Professional Responsibility Exam. And their app was surprisingly accessible. So I reached out to them, emailed them directly, and they said, "Well, you can try sort of scaled down version that we're sharing with people to see if it will meet their needs." And I tried it, and it surprisingly out of the gate because they followed Apple's accessibility development guidelines was completely usable for someone who was just using VoiceOver on an iPhone 3GS. So that was pretty amazing at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So You passed the bar exam, you worked at society for 5 years-ish, and then you left the society and went on to do some lawyering. So who do you work for now?
So right now I work for Tenant Law Group, which is a law firm that is entirely virtual, based in San Francisco. It is a small office that focuses on landlord-tenant law. So, uh, as you may know, in California, we have a rent control law that means that if you live in apartments that are more than 15 years old, your landlord can only increase your rent by a set amount. If your landlord does anything to uh, violate that standard, or does something like try to force you to leave a unit that is under rent control, or fails to provide you with essential services or repairs or maintenance, then they can be held liable for trying to deprive you of housing. So that is something that there are a lot of laws in place to protect, and something that we enforce through private civil litigation.
So it's a private firm.
It
It's
is a
not a
private,
non.
yeah,
So it's not a nonprofit.
it
Oh.
is a professional corporation, and we are a contingency-based firm. So the way that we make revenue is that when we work with a client through our intake process who has a case that we feel is has liability, we will enter into an agreement with them that we will do all of the work. We will cover the expenses up front, and in exchange, once there is a settlement agreement or a verdict, we collect 40% of the judgment, or
Okay.
the settlement proceeds.
Right. Okay. Are you having fun?
Yes, actually. I finding personal fulfillment. I'm not sure if you call it fun necessarily. Um, uh, these are situations where you are often working with folks who have experienced a great deal of trauma, who are experiencing housing security issues, or have uh, been put in a very vulnerable position, and probably, a lot of cases actually started out in a vulnerable position and have been exploited by landlords or property managers who have known that there's no other option for them but to accept these really terrible conditions. And uh, working with someone in those circumstances can be uh, challenging, because it's difficult to uh, experience that sort of reality that people are having to face on a regular basis. But on the other hand, when the folks responsible for that are held accountable, it feels really good.
So it makes a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, so it's I've always thought that that was an important uh, component of any job I I was in. That I started out as a DA, and working on cases that I thought helped the community. And then, of course, with Society for the Blind, we have a very direct impact on people's lives. And then
Hmm.
uh, now in a sort of um, more of a sense of remedying wrongs as opposed to improving life outcomes. I'm sort of doing similar work.
Okay. So then the next facet of your life is the part where you do have fun. So the other part of you, you're a gamer, and you're a gamer from way back, right?
Yes. It's entirely possible that my vision loss may not have been helped by the amount of time I spent very close to CRTs.
Okay.
But it was something that was always very much part of my life growing up. I played a lot of uh, console and computer games. Really sort of developed in that culture, for better or worse. And
And
oh, go on.
I was gonna say, and so you've taken it to the next level now.
So I'd say that in some respects, my gaming has mellowed. I'm not an MMO player or a MOBA player. Those terms mean anything to you. Uh, but I actually am a game designer, but it's an entirely different field. So I work on tabletop role playing games, and have actually continued that throughout the pandemic, and helped contribute to some books that are being published now. So that was kind of neat.
Wow. And you and your wife still have a podcast centered around gaming?
Yes, so we play a couple of games that we record and share with our community. We also do interviews with game designers from time to time when they are working on new projects. It's something that has been a little bit more off and on as we've transitioned. Both of us have transitioned into new jobs, but something that we are trying to get back into as the sort of work-life balance stabilizes.
Yeah, and pre-COVID, you guys went to a convention and got some content out of one of those gaming conventions too. Any
Yes,
plan?
so we regularly attended Gen Con, which is the largest gaming convention when it comes to board and tabletop games in the country, or probably the world. But something like 80 to 90,000 people go to Indianapolis every August, and uh, sort of get a look at all of the new things coming out, and eat too much.
Any possibilities of that happening now that COVID is changing? I won't say over.
It's probably something that will happen eventually, but we're the last time that we traveled interstate, we got COVID, so we'll
Okay, well,
might
we'll
take a
wait a
pass
bit.
for a while.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Hey, Aser.
Yeah.
Sam, if you don't mind, I got a question for Aser. Have you checked out the game called it's an app on the iPhone, Swordy Quest?
I have not. I've heard of it, and I've heard it demoed, I think, but have not played it myself.
It's kind of cool. It's completely voiceover accessible, and I mean it's not like an incredibly complicated game, but it's kind of fun.
Yeah, there have been a lot of folks in the especially in the indie space that have been paying a lot more attention to accessibility and the potential for garnering a very dedicated audience by catering to voiceover accessibility, and that's always something that's really good to see, because it means that there are there is a market out there for games that would otherwise not have a target audience that they could really home in on. And then, of course, our community is always in need of entertaining things to download.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so keep thinking of your questions, people. So we've got growing up as a blind kid, we got the going to college, we got the working as a lawyer, and we got the gaming part. So now, well, let's go to the tech stuff. So this is where I always learn something from you, Aser. Every time we talk, even if it's just a chit chat, I walk away from there and I know something I didn't know before. So when we were doing my classes, we would start out, and you guys are gonna laugh at me, but Aser would say, "So what's new?" So if that sounds familiar, that teaching style comes from Aser. So Aser, what's new? What's going on? What do you got for latest greatest gadgets, and I know you got a fetish for headsets and keyboards.
So we've been uh, lucky enough to be podcasting for a really long time. And so I've picked up a whole bunch of different um, uh, audio interfaces, microphones, and the like. And I guess one of the coolest things that I've picked up is a an audio interface, which is uh, a piece of equipment that goes from or that will take the signal from a microphone and then run it into your computer as a digital signal. Um, One of the more finicky parts of getting that all set up, especially if you cannot read VU meters and judge whether a signal is in the correct zone, is um, getting the levels exactly right. And there are certainly ways to you can do it by ear pretty easily, but if it can be a little finicky sometimes. And one of the cool things about this Audient Evo 4, which is a two microphone interface, is that you can actually just push a button and designate the channel that the microphone is on, and then just speak into the microphone at the level that you feel is going to be the normal range of volume that you will use, whether that's with you speaking or with an instrument playing, and make sure that you get the softest things that you're likely to capture and the loudest. And then it will take that and then intelligently set the gain on that microphone jack so that the channel gets the correct amount of signal, so that you don't cause the audio device to clip or be too quiet, which is also a bad thing. So that's one of the cool new things that I've been playing with.
And so it's called what? I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna take a list of this stuff, you guys. So
So that's the
okay.
Evo 4. And so that's something for folks who are looking at getting into podcasting, or who are into music and want to record themselves and just want something that's very easy to set up, especially if you're switching from uh, if you're switching between microphones, or switching between people who are recording on your equipment, or you're switching from one instrument to another. It's just a convenience sort of thing, but it's also a very nice little portable audio interface that's
Okay.
USB powered. And then um, there are a couple of different solutions that I've found for a different problem that I have as someone who uh, works from home uh, with a computer that is supposed to be for work. And uh, also, I have my iPhone and a couple of other things that I want to listen to. So, what I have found is that you can take something like either an audio splitter or a headphone splitter, or if you want to be more fancy, a uh, what's something called a line mixer, and you can connect those the little cheap, $10 to $20 Bluetooth receivers to it, and just send Bluetooth audio from your various devices to those receivers. Plug the receivers into the mixer, and then control the audio levels for each of the devices. So that is something that I started doing when I was at Society for the Blind, because we have our workstations, but there would be times I would need to test either software or apps, and it'd be just easier, rather than moving from one set of headphones to another, or repairing your Bluetooth headphones. It'd just be easier to just run everything in all at once, and then just turn down the volume of the stuff that you didn't need. So there are a couple of different solutions for that. Some Belkin makes a headphone splitter that actually has 5 different connections. That one's called the Rockstar. And the thing is that when you connect a audio cable to a headphone splitter, it will actually send signal both ways. So if you happen to be connecting multiple devices and one set of headphones to the splitter, the headphones will hear all of the audio signals from all of the other devices. That can cut down on the volume of the ultimate signal you get, and it can get a little noisy depending on how much, if there's any interference between the signals. But it's a usable way of doing things. The mixer is a far and away a cleaner way of doing it, but it's also a more expensive way.
How much more expensive?
Anywhere from $50 to $250.
Okay.
Actually, wait, $20 to $250.
Okay.
I've tried different devices in all of those price ranges.
Right. What would somebody need then if they wanted to get into podcasting? What are the basics that they would need?
It really depends on what kind of podcast you wanted to do. If you wanted to start off with a podcast that was just you reviewing things that you found interesting, or if you wanted to comment on news of the day, all you really need is any kind of microphone and a sound recording app or a program on the computer. Something like Audacity on Windows, or GarageBand on the Mac, or even just the voice memos app on the iPhone is perfectly capable of capturing audio that you can then open up and edit. There's a free to try app on the iPhone called Ferrite, which I've played with to generate audio before, and there's an app called Goldwave, which is also accessible.
What's the first one called? How do you spell it?
Ferrite. One second. Let me.
With an F as in file?
It is with an F. Oops, I have just demonstrated the problem with my approach because I muted my screen reader to focus on the call.
Don't worry, we can get it back. I'll get this later.
And then if you wanted to take it up a little farther, there are USB microphones, which will work with either your iPhone or with a computer. There are options in that realm that are go from anywhere from like $20 to $800, and usually the best ones are somewhere in between there. And if you wanted to do something a bit more involved, say with multiple hosts in the same place, you might need something like a device like the Evo 4 or its larger cousin, the Evo 8, or audio interfaces from other companies that allow you to route multiple microphones into the same computer. Or you could do what we are doing right now and just have multiple people call in using their computers or their phones into a Zoom call and have them record locally, or in a pinch, record the Zoom call and podcast that.
Okay. Aser?
Okay.
Yep.
It's Brandy. I have a Shure podcasting mic. Do they have it's a USB. It also has a lightning or Thunderbolt, I guess.
Are you using is it the
Or a
MV5
USB-C.
or yeah,
Yeah, so it's got a USB-C and it's got a USB-A.
Yep.
Do they have an adapter so that can plug into an iPhone?
So the way that you would Are you using the MV5 or the MV7?
I knew you were going to ask that. Hmm.
Is it really long, or is it cylindrical shaped?
Cylindrical. So,
So
it looks like the the cylindrical one with the, looks like your typical desktop with a tripod stand. That
you talk into the side or the front?
the front
Okay.
or the top of it.
Okay. So that sounds like an MV7. It has a
Yeah.
micro USB plug on the back, and it has capacitive sliders on the top.
Yeah, it's got it also has an XLR
Yes. So
port on the bottom.
that's the MV7.
Yeah.
So the way that you would connect that to an iPhone would be using a camera connection kit.
Thank you.
And the way the camera connection kit works is it has a lightning port, or a lightning plug, and then like a 6-inch cable, and it goes into a little box that has a lightning cable or a lightning jack, and that's for power, and then it has a USB port. What it was originally designed for was to connect camera, so that you could transfer your pictures to an iPad, but you can connect it to an iPhone and then connect your microphone into it, and it should provide enough power, and also have the iPhone recognize the device.
Oh, fantastic! It's a great microphone.
Yep, it makes Zoom calls sound great.
Yeah.
So when you connect it that way, you can use it for anything that uses the sort of Zoom protocols. Weirdly, I think it does not work with Teams, but I don't think you use Teams, so not a big deal.
No, not very often. Cool. Thank you.
Wow. I don't want to necessarily go away from the podcast discussion, but I do have another avenue to go down, unless you have something more you want to add about podcasts or equipment.
I just say that there's a thriving community of blind podcasters out there. I use a piece of software called Reaper on Windows for recording and editing podcasts, and they have a active mailing list on group.io, and there are a couple of different training programs online that are specifically geared toward learning to use Reaper with a screen reader. If you are on the Mac side, Reaper is also accessible there, and there are also accessibility efforts with Logic on the Apple platform, Pro Tools on Mac OS, and then I know of efforts on with Samplitude on Windows, and SoundForge. Those are there are still folks producing scripts for those, and Goldwave, I believe, is natively accessible as well.
Okay. Another subject area where technology has grown over the years is O&M, orientation and mobility, and using those specialized headphones that allow you to hear the environment around you and still use your navigation apps. Do you have experience with that? Can you talk a little bit about Soundscape, Good Maps, Blind Square, and how that works with these specialized headphones and your preferred headphones?
So the great thing about using bone conduction headphones or other kinds of audio devices that promote situational awareness is that you can continue to use your hearing as a way of detecting potential hazards while getting the benefit of turn-by-turn navigation. And I wouldn't say I was an early adopter of bone conduction headphones. I sort of skipped out on the first couple generations of aftershocks, but have pretty regularly picked up their headphones since about 2018 or so, and they do have definite benefits as far as being able to hear things while you are moving about. It's still the case that you have to practice active listening, because you can still sort of have your attention diverted by what you are listening to or listening for. But at the same time, it's much better than having standard headphones sort of obstructing your ears. Now, one thing to be mindful of when using something like a what are the current ones? An open run headset is that they aren't well suited to loud environments. So, be mindful that you're using an appropriate tool for the place where you will be going.
And the technology in bone conduction headphones versus the latest generation of Apple earbuds, or even there's a new Sony one, that technology is different, isn't it?
Yes. So last week, Sony announced the LinkBuds S, which are $200 earbuds that are sort of their most recent implementation of what Apple calls transparency mode. Everybody has sort of trademarked their own name for it. But the idea is that noise canceling headphones, when they are working to block out noise, are collecting a lot of information about what sounds are actually in the environment. And it took a while for people to realize that, hey, if we're collecting all of this information, why don't we give the user a switch to flip that, instead of blocking it out, sends it all to them into their headphones? And so all of a sudden, instead of having to take your headphones off to talk to somebody who's walked up to you and that you can't understand while your noise canceling headphones are on, all you have to do in the case of a AirPods is squeeze the stem, or on the Sony headphones, put your hand over one of the ear cups. Then all of a sudden you can have the audio from the outside world pass through. That is still a digital technology, so it's not quite the same as just having the sound transmitted through your bones as opposed to your ears or your ear canal through air. But it achieves some of the same things. The problem with transparency mode is that in a lot of ways it does color the sound, so that you might not hear exactly what you would in just with nothing on your head. And then alternatively, about a month ago, Sony released the original LinkBuds, which are earbuds that have, instead of a circular driver that sort of vibrates to produce sound, they have a ring-shaped driver, so that there is a hole cut in it so that you can continue to hear the outside world sort of through this tube. The effect really does improve your situational awareness, but it operates in a different way than bone conduction headphones, which instead of using air vibrated by a driver, instead use a transducer to vibrate against the bones in your temple to send sound directly into your eardrum.
Wow. Okay. As if that wasn't enough choices. The one that I've been looking at, and it's in my inbox, in my cart in Amazon, and I'm just haven't pushed go yet. But the Bose headphones. But how did that? So they're sunglasses with headphones built into the arms of the sunglasses.
So the way that works is sort of like if you took the idea of a very directional loudspeaker and scaled it down to the size of a couple of millimeters. The idea of the various Bose frames, a bunch of other companies have gotten into this market as well, including Amazon itself and Soundcore, which is Anchor's audio line. The idea is that the sound is tightly focused into a beam that is fired directly at your ear. And what this means is that the speakers are sitting on the arms of the sunglasses, positioned so that they are basically the equivalent of you taking those sort of like ear clip headphones and holding them on the side of your head, but more focused and tightly addressed directly toward your ear. The result is that, again, you have unobstructed hearing, but even more the case than the bone conduction headphones, you will have the issue of the sound being drowned out in noisy environments. The benefit over something like bone conduction headphones is that some folks find the pressure of a bone conduction headphone a little too uncomfortable over long periods, or they find that vibrating sensation against their temples to be uncomfortable, in which case the Bose frames might be a better option.
I'm always worried that I'm going to lose all those other options too as I'm walking around.
There is that. Although I have certainly lost enough pairs of sunglasses to make that a concern.
Yeah, but they don't usually fall off my head when I'm walking around. That's a totally different issue.
They certainly don't. That's one thing that has I have over the course of the last 4 years lost 2 pairs of AirPods.
Okay, it's a little expensive losing.
Yes.
Yeah. What about Braille Gadgets? What are your latest and greatest favorite Braille gadgets?
So I'm not too adventurous as far as Braille goes. The Society for the Blind purchased a Braille embosser a couple of years ago that is related to one I purchased when I was at the CSUN conference back in 2018. That's a device that is very useful, but I think in the modern age is something that has gone from something every blind college student would probably benefit from to something that most people don't consider an essential piece of technology. But having the ability to produce actual Braille materials to your specification is something that's pretty liberating if you can work that into your workflow. I use a Q Braille 40 from HIMS, which is a interesting sort of execution on Braille displays. I think it's typically referred to as a hybrid Braille display because it has all of the function keys and modifier keys of a standard laptop layout, but the Perkins style keyboard for actual text entry. This interestingly means that if you're using it as a Bluetooth device, you have to pair it twice. Once as a Braille display and once as keyboard. But when you do, it means that you can have full access to the normal suite of modifier keys that you would have on a Windows computer or an iPhone without having to learn any different combinations. So that was an advantage for me when I was thinking about going back to having a Braille display for doing things like proofreading documents that I'd written. And then I'd actually evaluated the Hable One keyboard, which I guess is the most adventurous I've been as far as Braille devices go in a while, which is a portable, compact keyboard that has the Braille dots arranged in a 2x3 grid, sort of vertically, the way that you do on-screen Braille entry on an iPhone, except they're sort of soft touch keys. And the idea is that you pair it with a phone, and then you hold it in both hands in front of you, and can then type more quickly than you could, or more consistently than you could if you were just brailing onto a touchscreen. Because that was just one of the things that I never quite developed a knack for, was doing Braille touch typing on glass. So that's a pretty neat device, and something that I assume folks will be seeing more of in the next couple of months.
Back to the Q4. Is that what it was?
The Q Braille?
The Q Braille. Does it have a number pad?
No, it does not. You would enter numbers using either the number sign or using computer Braille like Nemeth.
I'm trying to think of, so if you're using a screen reader and Braille display, how do you get it? How do you use JAWS reading keys?
Oh, so the JAWS reading keys you would accomplish by using, say, like insert and A for read all. You would use the laptop key.
The laptop.
Yeah, the laptop keyboard layout.
Got it.
Okay. Order. Audio now unmuted.
Question.
Oops.
Yep.
How would you apply that to, or can you give some feedback on Braille for sheet music or chord diagrams?
So for sheet music, there is a company called, I believe, Dancing Dots, that will actually produce Braille sheet music on demand, or they also will just sell you the software they use to make it. It's I believe it actually has the capacity to just scan sheet music and then convert it into Braille music notation. I know it's not cheap.
And you would have to know how to read Braille, music Braille.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it is a technology that is actively maintained, and I believe the company that actually produces the software actually also produces a line of instructional materials in Braille music. If you wanted to learn Braille music, I believe National Braille Press has a very introductory guide on how to use it. I have a copy around here somewhere. But
I think Hadley has one too.
yeah. Hadley Hadley has an entire course, or they did at one time.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was Norman. Norman, meet Aser. Aser, meet Norman.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
um, anything else to say about, oh, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. I hope my student's still here. Aser, maybe you can just answer real quick. So as far as a Braille display goes, when you're writing on your Braille display, it's when you, how do I say this? You go to read it and it's coming back as Braille. Is there anything that will transcribe the Braille that you're writing on the Braille display to print? Does that make sense?
Do you mean like
So a student of mine takes notes in the class on her
Right.
focus, and she wants to go home and plug it, put the notes in her computer. It's coming out Braille.
So there is a I think the best way to address that is to change the grade of Braille entry on the Braille display. Because I think if you can produce a different kind of text file on the focus. That would be a question for Z
Okay.
and Access Ingenuity,
Okay.
because I don't use a focus.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else on Braille?
Anything else on Braille? I would just say that in the very near future, it looks like the Library of Congress is going to be changing the way that they distribute Braille books. So getting used to refreshable Braille displays is probably something most people are going to have to get used to if they are Braille readers.
Order.
Okay.
Audio now
I have
unmuted.
another Braille question. Sorry, the clock's about to go off.
It's 11 o'clock in the morning.
Just any tips on Braille display for maybe some equipment that is digital, i.e. like stomp boxes or modules where you're turning, there's 3 or 4 knobs and it has banks of different, in this case, sounds, or maybe like they call them modeling amps. So there's a button where you can
David
change
Guy
it
has
to
left the
10
meeting.
different amps or settings. Any just like general tips on how you would label or think that out, or an interface, or help me out here.
So
Norman's our musician.
do you mean like to display real-time output, or the actual, or to just label the actual controls?
Whatever you had to do.
So
Yeah.
so
Hang on, Ron, you're not muted.
Oh,
Sorry.
so I guess it would be real time, and I understand this, your second response. So I'm trying to think of it as you're asking it. So definitely real time, live performance, or I guess it's just a general labeling. How do you convert? Because what I've had to do, I had all my equipment was digital, and now I went back to analog. So let's say I'm using a
Tammy Stevens has left the
phase
meeting.
shifter pedal, which is just
Right.
a tone pedal. So before I could stomp on it and turn a dial, and it would say high, low, medium. Back in the day, it was 2 knobs, and
Joy
you
has
turn it,
left the meeting.
and you turn it to high, low, medium.
Right.
So okay, so I'll stop.
So generally speaking, if it's something that you can control or that you can interface with using a computer, the ideal would be to run it as a plugin that you could then script using JAWS scripts to sort of scan the output and figure out and then display it.
Oh,
That would be something that would that you'd have to talk to a JAWS scripter about. Generally speaking, I have a tendency to prefer analog gear for the exact reason that you mentioned. That it's just a lot easier to deal with. As time goes on, there are more and more sort of simulation plugins and other plugins that are becoming accessible because the Juice framework that a lot of them use to code their plugins are or has actually implemented an accessibility layer to facilitate parameters being read out. So that is something that will just sort of come along as plugins and software are updated to sort of take full advantage of the new software.
And then the last one, you and Brandy mentioned the lightning plug. What is a lightning plug?
So a lightning connector is the connector that is used to connect to an iPhone. So it is the one port that an iPhone still has. It is a proprietary 8-pin connector. At the time when Apple sort of unveiled it back in around 2012-ish, it was noteworthy because it was the first cable that you could plug in either way and it would go in. Since then, the USB-C has become universal, but at the time, Lightning was pretty revolutionary. Unfortunately, it's now much slower than USB-C, which is why the different regulatory bodies, particularly in Europe, are advocating that Apple just give up on Lightning and switch to USB-C, which theoretically is happening next year.
And USB-C is the plug that pretty much all your other devices use to charge.
Exactly.
It's just Apple's the one that's different.
Yes. Which is ironic because Apple was among the first to adopt USB-C in computers back in 2016.
I just want to come around in a circle now. So we've talked about technology in terms of technology for the sake of technology, Braille, related to Braille, related to O&M. So the other area that we teach is life skills or living skills. Do you cook? Do you use, do you have technology that you could share with us that help with daily living skills or something new, something different? Or is it, or it could be the plain old ordinary boring stuff too?
So I rely on the plain old ordinary boring stuff for the most part. Someone did surprise us by giving us a talking microwave when we got married. So that is a rather noisy sort of local fixture in our household. We also have a countertop Innova oven, which uses steam. That is pretty neat because you can use it for sort of sous vide stuff, and it is controlled with the iPhone, just like their immersion circulators. Then other than that, most of what I do is still just the stuff that you learn in living skills. I'd say the most technologically related thing I use that's living skills related is we do use the robot vacuum cleaners because we're lazy.
I want one of those.
So the Eufy, the company, the sort of home line that is an offshoot of Anchor. Makes a lot of robot vacuum cleaners that are pretty good value. We bought one last Prime Day, I believe. And they can do things like map out your house so you can tell it where to go and, importantly, where not to go. Probably not as big a draw for folks in this call, but you can also pilot it using the app, which, if you just want to torment your cat.
But not your guide dog. We'd never do
Certainly
that to
not
our
your guide dog. Well, the guide dog would chase it, is the problem.
Okay.
So the other thing that I have found useful is we use a lot of smart lighting around the house, because I will, when setting up for phone calls and the like, often forget to set up our, external lights or the extra lights that provide, sort of key lighting for the room. So it's better that it's just connected to either a motion sensor, or what you can actually do is you can automate it so that when you are getting the 5-minute notice for a Zoom call, if this then that will actually send a signal to your lights and turn them on. Something we do in other rooms where we're not doing things like Zoom calls is we have motion sensors that will detect when someone is in a room and then turn the lights on, and then 5 or 10 minutes after they leave, the lights will just automatically turn off, which saves power and also prevents me from leaving lights on when I'm not paying attention to where I'm going.
And diabetic tools.
Diabetic tools. Oh,
I think
sorry.
Melody raised her hand. I think Melody had a question.
Okay.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, you could do the diabetic tools, but my question was like technology in your work.
Okay.
So
go on. Oh, it
She's
just
making her phone be quiet.
uh
I think she's.
yeah, I hate this stupid phone. Anyway, my question was like technology in your work. We're having trouble. Like, I still have some vision, and I do financial stuff. But when you do the Excel and stuff, even when you're blind, you have to do stuff for people with vision can see. So how do you do those charts and graphs, or even in Word? Because even in law, you have to follow a certain standard. How do you do those so they're visually appealing and correct, and then without the vision? Because it was so hard. We did a graphs, it looked like crap. So how do you do
Did not.
yeah. But I did go to a seminar that kind of told me about a program to use, but I was just wondering, how do you do it with technology in your job?
So there are a couple of things to bear in mind when it comes to formatting to ensure that something is aesthetically pleasing from a visual standpoint. A lot of the work that we do actually starts with templates already. So that's one way that you can address an issue is if you have.
I'm sorry, did you say templates? Sam didn't hear that.
Yes, templates.
Did hear that.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Aser.
Yeah, so we use templates. So there's a lot of situations where if you're having to deal with a lot of format changes, a lot of things like numbering and bulleting, it's a lot easier to just set that up once, vet it with someone who can see, and then continue to use that. Ideally, then you can use something like Text Analyzer with JAWS to make sure that there are no odd changes or unexpected changes in formatting, text size, color, that sort of thing. Beyond that, as far as like placement of graphs and the like, you can try to use methods like figuring out how many, or how far away in inches from from the border your graphs or your charts are, so that you know that they are expanded to a size that should be visible. The thing is that those sorts of tasks, I think as much as we want to be able to do as much independently as possible, it usually does benefit from having a second pass go through and make sure that things are ready to go. And so that often is something that I will still do when preparing documents, usually because they have to go through a case manager's hands anyway. In my case, I go, does this look wonky to you? And if so, let me know. Let me know why. And then they'll give it a pass. And then if everything looks fine, then they'll file it.
Order audio now.
Thank you.
Can you, I'm sorry to interrupt, can you relate that to, if let's say you're thinking about maybe going back to school, any equipment or just some tips on what to look for as far as accessibility to go back to like junior college or what have you?
So what I would recommend when going back to school is connecting with the Student Disability Services or equivalent office in that institution, because they will have, in the course of their work, vetted all of the tools that the school uses. So they will be able to comment on the best practices for accessibly accessing those sorts of things, whether they use Office 365 or Google Suite. They will have training resources and be able to connect you with people who can assist you in getting the most out of whatever software platform they are utilizing. Also, then, if it happens that it isn't accessible in one form or another, they would then be able to advocate for you in making sure that an alternative approach to completing assignments using that tool were available to you.
Okay, thank you.
So, Aser, do you come across a lot of blind people out in the workforce that's not part of like Society for the Blind or something?
Well, I am fairly active in a couple of different mailing lists and the like, where folks who are blind or visually impaired are contributing. So, I think it's just a matter of being in the right places to connect with people and share experiences. There are more and more people who are blind and visually impaired literally every day. But when you have so many people in the world, you can quickly develop an impression that you're sort of an island unto yourself. But the truth of the matter is, there are hundreds of thousands of blind professionals going about their business every day. Plenty of them are lawyers.
The one thing I don't think that people realize is that the disability community is the largest minority in the United States, more than any other minority in the country. So that is, think about that for a second. More than any other minority, disability is the largest minority in this country.
It's huge.
It's very huge.
It's powerful.
It's very powerful.
Oh, speaking of which, diabetes.
Yeah.
Um, so all of these sort of diagnostic tools, sort of things, have some accessibility challenges related to them. They are talking blood glucose monitors um, and the like. I just sort of was diagnosed with diabetes a little while ago, and I use the Freestyle Libre just because I'm lazy. That is a sort of a sort of continuous glucose monitor in that it's always reading blood sugar levels, but it isn't quite the same thing as a continuous glucose monitor because it isn't continuously recording blood glucose levels. So in order for you to use it, you have to take your phone or the monitor and put it into scanning mode and then bring it close to the CGM. And the neat part of it is that the app is accessible and produces a reading in a log that is something that you can read using VoiceOver.
Wow. Okay.
I have an additional question.
Yeah.
I have realized that I'm relying a lot more on my ears and listening, and I want to take care of my hearing. And I have noticed that I'm more sensitive to noise. And my question is, if you have had, to have to bring the volume down or take care of that hearing, because I don't want to lose my hearing with time because I'm using it a lot. Is there like a cutoff point where you're like, okay, this is enough hearing, like loudness? Like for instance, when you're going out, parties and noise, or even using your devices. You talked a lot about electronic devices and saw everything that's out there technology wise. So I don't know, like when I'm using my laptop, I don't know what's enough loud. Is it loud or is it too loud? And where do you kind of cut it off, and what's that fine line balancing your hearing?
Generally speaking, I try very hard not to in absolute terms take things like headphones above 50% of the output that they put out. That's something that's will be variable from device to device. Some some headphones are just quieter than others. But if you are routinely maxing out your headphones, you probably need different headphones. The your various devices can impose a maximum limit on the absolute volume that they'll produce, and if it's something that is of particular concern to you, then there are devices typically marketed for use by children that will not go above a certain decibel level. Like no matter how how high you turn up the volume on the given on the source device.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
There's even a setting in your iPhone that you can turn on, and it'll let you know if your phone the volume in your phone has been too high for a prolonged amount of time.
Yeah, it's one of the weekly reports you can get from Health, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also you can if you have an Apple Watch, it'll also notify you if you have been in noisy environments for too long. Mm-hmm. One of the weirder things that it tells you about.
Other questions, guys?
Order.
Yes,
Audio.
two. The headphones, is it you get what you pay for? In other words, if I'm getting the Dollar Tree 99-cent headphones and plugging them into my Victor, but I'm having to crank it, going back to the lady's question, am I damaging my ears in doing that? Not that it's loud, but maybe it's a strain. And or could you talk a little bit about TV, just TV apps and watching, and I'll mute.
All right. Well, that is it's a very real issue that, the thing is that not just like, the volume, or, all devices put out different levels of volume, all different, well, wouldn't say all, but, a lot of different devices have a different sound signature. So, one thing that Sam sort of needled me about is that I have a lot of headphones. And so on my desk, there are a bunch of different headphones for different uses. Whether it's if I'm monitoring recording for a podcast, or if I'm listening to vocals, or I'm mastering a podcast audio. And the idea is that the between your low, mid, and high frequencies, if you're listening for something particular in your music and you're not getting it, and you turn up the volume trying to get it, it's entirely possible that you just need a different kind of audio device, or to use an equalizer, sort of get you that extra amount of bass or that extra amount of high-end detail that you're looking for. As far as like TV apps, so we try to keep abreast with all of the different streaming services that use audio description. So because of that, we bought into a lot of Apple content over the years. But lately, we've been spending most of our time on HBO Max, and Amazon Prime actually has a surprising amount of its content audio described. Though interestingly, a bunch of it is described using text to speech, which is interesting.
Which means using a computerized voice.
Yes.
No voice actors there.
Yep. So I imagine it was significantly cheaper and faster to produce, but it sounds like it.
Yeah.
So it's a there are a couple of services that you have to sort of check on to see where the content you want is, but then at the same time, it's not just a matter of where you can find the content, it's where if you are visually impaired, where you can find the audio described version of that content. And for that, you go to the audio description project from ECD.
Yeah.
So Aser, do you ever use Teams, and how is it compared to Zoom?
I do use Teams, and it's actually something that if you are in a Microsoft heavy environment, or looking to work with an office that has a lot of people, that is built on the Microsoft tech stack, you need to get used to using Teams. The interface itself is pretty straightforward, and feels a lot like Zoom in many ways. But navigating through chats can be a bit of a pain, and I generally prefer handling that part of it using the iOS app. But there are some cool things, like if you copy a link to a OneDrive file and paste it into a Teams chat, it automatically attaches the file. That's kind of neat.
Hey Google, what time is it?
1:28.
So I would say that it's a good idea to practice using it, and it does integrate well with other Microsoft services if you use them.
Okay. I think we could go on for a long time. But we won't because you have to get back to work.
I do have to get to work, and Diane just left.
Oh, well then, since Diane left, oh, that's it. Game
See,
over.
that's the thing is that, you know, when these things used to be in person, it was really easy to just sneak out. Now, not so much.
No. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so
yeah.
much, Aser.
And
Wealth of
Aser's going to be
knowledge.
here tomorrow for round 2. We should call this something. Round 2 of the Aser Hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good name for it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Aser. It was nice hearing from you again.
Well, it was a pleasure speaking with all of you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.